Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Point number 2. The scientific method of history. In standards 3rd and 4th, as part of environmental studies, we have become acquainted with various sciences. The special characteristics of all these sciences is that their facts or evidence can be tested in experiments which can be repeated anywhere, anytime. So, the definition and main point is the scientific method. What is scientific method? The method of using a number of different tests to determine whether the evidence is reliable is called the scientific method. Repeat after me. The method of using a number of evidence of different tests to determine whether the evidence is reliable is called the scientific method. There are many things that happened since our birth that we may not know about. However, our grandparents or parents or other often tell us amusing stories of our childhood. Those stories are a part of their memory. However, when different people tells us about the same event, we find differences in their narrations. It makes us wonder which one is right. We need to examine the details of each narration carefully to decide the correctness of the facts. It is not possible to conduct experiments to recreate the events that have happened in the past. Therefore, the method of presenting history is different from that of that sciences. Even so, history uses the scientific method at every stage, namely while looking for and collecting evidence, examining the evidence, and while putting it together. When required, help is also taken from other sciences. That is why history is considered to be a scientific discipline. History is not written solely on the basis of imagination. It is depend on evidence. Ancient objects, structures, sculptures, pots, coins, inscriptions, copper plates, books, manuscripts, traditional stories and traditional songs remembered over many generations, etc., are the sources of history. The sources of history are of three types. Number one, material sources. Number two, written sources. And number three, oral sources. Repeat after me. The sources of history are of three types. Number one, material sources. Number two, written sources. Number three, oral sources. These pictures are the examples of sources of history, as like pots and coins. These are material sources of history. A copper plate, books and manuscripts, these are written sources of history. In order to find out what happened in the past and how it happened, evidence available from all these sources is collected and thoroughly examined to determine its reliability, with the help of the evidence that stands these tests. Past events are put in a proper sequence and a historical account is written. This is the scientific method. We can divide the sources of history in three types. Number one, material sources, as like coins, forts, pots, old structure, pillars, rock-cut caves, and written sources, letters, copper plates, stone inscriptions, and biographies, and oral sources, traditional songs, folk songs, and folk tales. So we conclude this chapter on this point, that the method of using a number of different tests of determination whether the evidence is reliable is called the scientific method. What is scientific method? The method of using a number of different tests to determine where the evidence is reliable is called the scientific method. And there are three types of sources of history. Number one, material sources. Number two, written sources. And number three, oral sources. Homework. Question number 1. Fill in the blanks. Number 1. History is not written solely on the basis of dash. Question number 2. Answer each question in one sentence. 1. What is scientific method? Question number 3. Classify the sources of history using the chart given here. Sources of history: coins, letters, forts, traditional songs, pots, copper plates, old structures, stone inscriptions, folk songs, pillars, biographies, rock-cut caves, folk tales, books, manuscripts. Make 3 boxes and put properly and classify these sources of history in proper box: material sources, written sources, and oral sources, and put these all things in proper box. Today's thought: knowledge is the only treasure that increases on sharing. इल्म ही सिर्फ एक ऐसी दौलत है जो बांटने से बढ़ती है.